And welcome to the No Assembly Required podcast, a podcast where we talk about nothing except for the end of all things. And so while I stall for time here, while Audrey fixes her camera, there we go. Oh, well, maybe not so much. Anyway, welcome back to the show. We're doing a special Friday night edition. We usually do this Thursday, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Welcome your trio of hosts, starting with Audrey, each during the show, Ember, RedRomina with the good hair, and of course, your dark lord of the interwebs, Roberto Blake. Welcome to No Assembly Required podcast, filmed in front of a live YouTube audience.
Woo! What were you munching on there, Audrey? That looked like a really big cracker thing.
It has chocolate.
All righty then. So we only really have like our format has usually been that we cover like 3 stories, but this time we're doing one story with I guess you could say one story with 3 characters. Those of you who may be familiar, filmmaker and YouTuber extraordinaire Casey Neistat recently put out a documentary during South by Southwest. Then he's currently shopping for distribution for it. So if you didn't get to see it at South by Southwest or buy a virtual online ticket, then you're not going to probably get to see this until next year or the end of this year or something like that. It's a documentary called Under the Influence, and its main subject is one David Dobrik, a massive YouTuber. Does anyone know, Audrey, Romina, do you guys know how many subscribers Dobrik has currently?
Did he pass 10 mil?
Oh, he's definitely been past 10 mil for quite a while. I think he's at like 17 or 18 million, and I think he has his second channel has, I think, definitely over 1 million subscribers, I think, on his second channel. And then I believe he might be close to, his second channel has almost 8 million or more, getting close to 10 million there. Don't know if he's going to keep growing. We'll talk about that in a minute. And his Views podcast channel has 1.7 million subscribers, and its performance is pretty good. It still gets about 500,000 views to 1 million views every episode of his podcast in the last year, with the last episode being a couple of days ago, being almost 400,000 in 4 days. So the Views podcast is still doing very well, despite any controversy. The Views Clips channel seems to have like YouTube Shorts. Those are doing those. That's more recent, and YouTube Shorts is weird, so that they don't seem to be pushing that as heavily, and it doesn't seem like it's doing anything noteworthy, so to speak. So again, it feels like despite massive controversies since the pandemic, David Dobrik's career, while not what it was pre-pandemic, it seems like his career is more or less alive and well. And for those not familiar, David Dobrik is a massive YouTuber, about 18 million subscribers, best known for his vlogs and for being one of the media stars to transition from Vine, along with Jake and Logan Paul, Lele Pons, Gabby Hanna, Liza Koshy, who he was formerly dating, who you may be familiar with for some of her accomplishments. She's done several films on Netflix, has her own YouTube Originals show. And again, David Dobrik is known for getting pretty much close to 10 million views an upload, which he's still pretty much more or less doing. There's a point pre-pandemic he used to get 20 million views, 30 million views per upload, but those had more time to accumulate views. But it seems like in a 30-day or so cycle, his videos still get close to 10 million. Again, not what it used to do. It used to do that by the end of a week. So it looks like he's lost some momentum, but I would not say that controversy has destroyed his career over the last 18 months. But this documentary is very serious, and has serious implications, and it will be kind of putting him as the main focus in the spotlight to a mainstream audience when it releases on a distribution platform of some kind. And I think that's what we really want to talk about with the main two big controversies, I think being, or rather three, is the assertion that David's videos and content, as Casey put it, creates an environment that has put the subjects of his videos in harm's way and at risk. The main focus of that, in this case, being Jeff Wittick, longtime member of the Vlog Squad, that had a near fatal accident, massively disfigured him, traumatic brain injury, just to give people background. And then Romina and Audrey, definitely want your thoughts here. I'm just laying out background since I have a lot of the information right in front of me here. And the other one being that he creates an environment that has created situations of either sexual harassment or sexual misconduct, and that in general, it's an unprofessionally handled thing that creates problems. And so that's largely the issue here. And the reason I think we're covering this is just because the implications of the rise of a prominent influencer, and then it basically showing the fact that like David was the golden boy of the internet and was the poster boy for what the influencer experience and influencer lifestyle is, and what happens when everyone who wants to grow up to be an influencer gets fame, money, unlimited resources, and no guardrails that come from the traditional gatekeepers of the industry in film and television. And it was supposed to be an inside look at that. Casey originally had something lighthearted planned when he started the project in 2009 with his co-director, Christine, who was instrumental in helping him with his HBO series back in the day, the Neistat brothers, with him and his brother Vaughn, someone, Audrey, I know you're a big fan of lately.
Did you say Vaughn?
I said Vaughn. Vaughn, however you want to, like, you can pronounce Van, or Vaughn, you know, like it's
Vaughn sounds cooler.
Vaughn
I
sounds
know, but
Vaughn. Which does he prefer, Van or Vaughn?
Van.
Oh.
Okay, so Van sounds so much like Dan.
Roberto.
Van sounds so much like Dan. Vaughn sounds better. Anyway, Van Neistat, the Neistat brothers. So, Christine, his co-director, helped launch some of his initial success in filmmaking with the Neistat brothers and on HBO. It's not impossible that this thing gets picked up by HBO Max, to be honest with you. That'd be very good for Casey, back to his roots, so to speak. It's probably going to get that or Netflix, I would imagine. But what I do think is that this puts, and I want your opinions on this, is I think that this is about more than David Dobrik. I think this is about kind of like a shift in how people perceive influencers. And I think that this is probably not good for the culture. Thoughts?
Yeah. I mean, I think like this David Dobrik thing kind of reminds me of the Logan Paul situation, where things just kept escalating and escalating and escalating until it kind of reached this almost like delusional state that these YouTubers get to, where they're just so disconnected almost from reality to where they do dumb things, and then it backfires, and then it looks, it gives a bad rep to all creators. But it's also because of the culture, right? There's kind of on YouTube right now, it's all about bigger, better, crazier. So when that's at the center of,
how much accountability do you think audiences have for enabling and encouraging and egging things on?
I think it's a two-way street, right? Like the audience is the one who's watching, and then the creators are just feeding what people want to see. So it's in human nature to want to see like bigger, better, crazier, more outlandish things. So
question to both of you: who has more "quote unquote" influence? A solo creator or the 10 million people watching them?
I mean, I feel like that's like, I haven't, obviously no one's here has seen the the documentary, but I feel like that's kind of the, how do you end this documentary with that question? Because I feel like there's just no answer, right? It's like, it's obviously, it's kind of it's a mix of both. It's the audience who is driving this content, and then the creators who just take it too far. So
I believe in individual responsibility, but you have to admit, 10 million people is a lot of peer pressure. I don't think peer pressure is by itself an excuse for anything. It certainly wasn't when I was growing up, but 10 million people telling you what they want, and also that number of people changing your life, making you from a nobody into a somebody, making you rich. Isn't there some beholdenness to give people what they want when it's that many people? How do you say no to that?
Said, when Will said equal, I think it's both. It's the audience that's watching and consuming and egging on the, you know, the raising of the bar, but then it's also on creators to not, you know, cave to the peer pressure and also not do things that are dangerous.
Is that a reasonable expectation? Let's all consider that we probably all, I mean,
I think there's responsibility on both ends, right?
Right. But see, this is where because I'm conflicted. I'm the individual responsibility. But on the other hand, I would be somewhat more understanding of the idea of being like, feeling like you're beholden to the people who put you on, right? Like they made me, they get to decide what I do. I can see that argument of, because also, by the way, it's not like we haven't seen audiences act from a place of entitlement and make demands on influencers and creators. We've even seen grown parents drive their children to people's homes that are not listed publicly and invade their privacy, trespass on their property, and say, my child watches you and puts on merch, and you have the easiest job in the world, and how dare you not take a selfie with them when we showed up on a Saturday morning on your doorstep. You have grown parents acting from an entitled position, saying that their children made these stars and these people owe them something and owe them the access. In a world where that's true,
individual responsibility.
I do believe in individual responsibility, but I'm also believe in a reasonable amount of it. Is it reasonable to expect a human being to say no to millions of people or millions of dollars?
Yes.
I mean, they can say no and not film dead bodies. You know what I mean?
I mean, I'm going to say, yes, it is reasonable to expect
money
that of them.
Make compromises on their morals all the time, Audrey.
I would say that it is reasonable. It's reasonable to expect that from them, because with great power comes great responsibility. But I do also realize that it is very challenging, and I wouldn't put it under somebody to mess up and fall to that kind of pressure, because
come up short.
It is, right, because it is really difficult, you know.
Like, how many times is someone, let's say you make 3,000 videos. How many times are you allowed, like, to make problematic content, and then we say you're a bad person, you're a piece of shit?
Like a rule that applies to everyone for that. It's a very, like, it depends type of situation.
Does it? Like, 'cause here's my thing. It's like, Mr. Beast made a great point when he was talking to Elon Musk. Mr. Beast can literally feed, and probably has by this point, feed hundreds of thousands of people. We've seen people come at him for the smallest of things. We've seen people decide to bring up and dredge up, like, things he said as a 16-year-old, as if that has any relevance to what he's done in the last, like, 3 years since being, like, 23 years old and who he is today, or as if anybody should really give a crap about that compared to the food bank they started. He's starting another one here in Atlanta soon, by the way. I'm going to probably try to get involved with that, see what I can do to help. He's launched Beast Philanthropy, Team Trees, 20 million trees still being planted. Team C's 30 pounds of garbage lifted from the oceans and rivers and streams, massive environmental impact. Like tell me something. How many times is he allowed to screw up, or how many screw ups does it take to neutralize all the good that he's done in the world and say, I can't mess with this guy, despite the fact he's literally, planted 20 million trees, helped get 30 million pounds of garbage out of the, water, fed hundreds of thousands of people who are starving. How many screw ups is he allowed before none of that matters?
I mean, I personally don't think that good cancels out bad or bad.
Then none of us should bother doing good. Then we should all be evil as hell if good doesn't cancel out evil.
You can do good and just not be bad.
I'll go full dark load now. We should all be evil.
You can do good things and not be bad, right?
Right, and you can be bad and do good things.
Yeah, I don't think either way should cancel out.
But people literally do that. That's what cancel culture is. You can be a good human being for 30, 40, 50 goddamn years. And what people will do is they will take the worst 5 days of your entire life and decide the worst 5 days of your entire life are more important than the best 10,000 days of your life.
I think that's a little different.
Is it?
Than what I'm talking about with good doesn't cancel out bad or vice versa. Because, cancel culture can be extreme sometimes, but there's also times where if someone does something that's obviously really bad, that it's, good to, you can't just be like, oh, well, they, donated.
Yeah, but who gets to decide? Who gets to decide what really bad, in quotes, means?
I mean, unfortunately, I think it's up to the public, right? And it's hard if things don't actually go
up to the public,
because then it gets. It's not up. It shouldn't be up to the public. It just is because it's social media and everything's online. So there's no kind of getting around that. If you're kind of looking into the public eye, is going to judge you regardless. So if someone did something I'm going to get really extreme, sexually assaulted someone, obviously,
allegedly,
it doesn't matter how much.
Allegedly,
yeah, it can be allegedly, but that's up to the public to come up. Unfortunately,
I thought it was up to the rule of law.
Yeah, but with things like sexual assault, that's a whole other category of.
Is it up to the court of public opinion? Because the thing is, the court of public opinion doesn't even have the ability to verify a claim or an accusation versus an act. Part of a criminal investigation is confirming we can use Johnny Depp and Amber Heard, two people who are abusing each other, as a really good example, as a mischaracterization of that, and people having to walk things back. We also can use things like the Innocence Project, and how many, particularly men of color, have been falsely accused of crimes in general, including burglary, murder, and things only for circumstantial evidence to convict them, while physical evidence exonerates them. Meanwhile, their entire livelihood and reputation is destroyed in the court of public opinion, with nothing walking back. Historically in America, all it's taken is an accusation to literally destroy people's lives. We had puritanical, quite literal Salem witch hunts in this country, where women, for the crime of literally just not being compliant with a husband or not giving in to the advances of a male suitor, could have their entire agency stripped, be murdered, burnt at the stake. And then beyond that, when that nonsense was over, women were constantly under the threat of men who had power at that time making the accusation, which could then, through the court of public opinion, allow them to be institutionalized and lobotomized. And that was a real thing that happened a lot of the time. The court of public opinion didn't get it right on people's various rights and civil liberties for many decades in this country. And I think that when we look at this concept of accountability, we have to ask ourselves, are regular ass people responsible enough and intelligent enough to hold anyone accountable? We have a really bad track record of it.
I actually just finished watching an episode of Orville where they end up on a planet that kind of looks like Earth and has developed human life like Earth, and it's very similar. And they have a system, like their system of law is just like every single person wears like these little badges that have upvotes and downvotes.
Oh dear God in heaven, that sounds
And
terrifying.
literally, like any little action that you take, like if you say to someone like "Have a nice day," like they can like upvote you, right? Or like if you trip and like mess up, like knock over their coffee or whatever, they might like downvote you, right? And all that stuff kind of like adds to it, kind of like the Black Mirror episode, except that this actually goes into law, right? So then they actually have like an apology tour where like if somebody reaches like 1 million downvotes, they have to go on an apology tour. Right. And so like they actually have a publicist instead of like a lawyer, they have a publicist that will put them on different like TV shows and to kind of get people to.
That sounds like when they used to have people do a walk of shame in puritanical society if they were an adulterer. If you were accused, not even convicted, like they would try you and then find you guilty. Let's just be real. They'd find you guilty of adultery, and the walk of shame, the way in our culture how we say walk of shame is like, you sleep over and then you get caught. Well, it comes from what they used to do is they used to make people walk publicly down the public square naked, and they used to flog them along the way. That's what the walk of shame comes from. Because how dare you, act in an impure way, right? So that's our history of public shaming, our history of puritanicanism. That's the origins of cancel culture, to be honest with you, and the mob mentality. Did you guys ever see that movie, that one movie, like at 5 million views, where the thing is at 5 million views, I die? So there's this movie, and the short version is, there's this film, I forget the name of it, but like the premise is that 5 million, this guy is being held hostage, and when the video gets 5 million views, he'll be executed on camera. He'll be murdered. And the thing is, they are literally torturing him and holding him at gunpoint, making him on camera confess to things he never actually did, that they've supplanted some circumstantial evidence for. And then it's called clickbait. That's right. That's what it was. It's called, that was the name of the film, clickbait. And they have summaries of this thing, and they break it down they have reviews. There's really good reviews, like people reacting to this film online. It's actually really good. So like, it's called clickbait. And the thing is, he's like, the court of public opinion is literally deciding, okay, I find everything he did morally reprehensible, and I want to see this dude die, and I want to see it on camera. I want to see justice be done. But they don't have any way of actually knowing that the things he's confessing to are legit. And, we find out by the end of the film that no, he didn't do any of those things. And, we find out why he was set up, and that's this really messed up whole situation involving his own family. But the premise of that makes me think about the future of a world where we have right now in real time, the court of public opinion can decide to destroy people's livelihoods overnight. They can decide to rile people up to the point to where physical violence might be done to people. And the thing is, it doesn't even have to be about something that is true per se. And that's really, really like dangerous. And goes, okay, what does this have to do with like something like the David Dobrik situation? Again, the David Dobrik situation is a big meta narrative on influencer culture and what it means to be an influencer. And what's I'm worried about is right now, it's really, really cool to say everyone has to be accountable. Everyone needs to, be accountable. Culture of accountability. We're the generation of accountability. Gary Vee just made a short little, one of his little short films where he said, like, he's talking about accountability. And it's become this buzzword. And I think that people want to hold everyone accountable but themselves. And the reason I can loop this back to David Dobrik is, let me ask you guys something. You guys don't have a personal relationship with David Dobrik, but from all the videos and films you saw even before what happened to Jeff Wittick. Would either of you put your life in David Dobrik's hands?
No. Sorry.
Why not?
Because he does crazy things.
Yeah, he just seems kind of like I'm not sure if immature is a word, but
Immature is a great word for it.
I mean, it's just and I don't mean that as like a bad thing, because like I'm definitely immature.
Oh, I'm childish as hell.
My life. But I think that it's like this kind of people pleasing immaturity that
anything for views.
Right, which leads down a very dangerous path sometimes, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's
which I disagree with that culture to begin with. I've always screamed about the culture of clickbait being something I detest.
There's also, I mean, there's levels to this, right? I mean, like there's degrees of it, right? Like if it was like, you know, I'm gonna like in the case of what happened with Jeff, like I would not be like, oh yeah, let's do this. I would not sign up for that, you know.
Why do you think there was so much backlash against this in particular versus like the era of Jackass? I mean, the only difference is they had a disclaimer.
I didn't even realize that there was any backlash for this, because I really don't think about
massive backlash.
Did Jackass have like, did they have to like sign a contract that was like, I could die doing this and I won't get sued?
They have a disclaimer before every single episode, and then
telling you not to try this at home.
Right, and then also like continuously throughout, like verbally, like Knoxville will say things like, you know, don't do this at home or whatever.
Before all of that, before even Jackass was really, or maybe even afterward, do you guys remember very, very, very old school YouTube? And do you remember what used to be called Backyard Brawls?
Yeah.
This might have been before your time, Audrey, but back in the early days of YouTube, and by that I mean like 2008, 2009, 2010, that type of thing, a lot of people were doing amateur, homemade, like backyard brawls, simulating the WWF, which is now called the WWE, World Wrestling Federation, now called World Wrestling Entertainment. And they were doing like all kinds of crazy things, homemade with no safety, no provisions, building homemade wrestling rings or jumping off of the roof, doing wrestling moves and all kinds of nonsense. It was like, you know, backyard brawls. That was a thing. There was all kinds of amateur stunts and the early pranks of YouTube, and people did get hurt, physically get hurt a lot of times. People used to do pranks on YouTube and go to the hospital or almost die a lot in the early days of YouTube, and it never had the levels of controversy that we're seeing here in this situation. And a lot of them were, you know, borderline just as bad in terms of how it worked out, or people had much more grievous injuries or long-term consequences or physical disability from a lot of these things. And it didn't have this kind of backlash back then.
But I think it's because like how the culture has changed since then, right? Because now, like, you know, YouTubers have become just in themselves more like household names, celebrities. Like kids look up to them like they would have.
So is it just worse because, oh, it's bigger or there's money now in it? Because again, back then there was less money in it, but now there's money in it, so now it matters.
I feel like maybe because
it was literally
now
the same behavior, by the way.
YouTubers.
It was the same behavior, by the way.
But like if I saw some random
kids wanted to be YouTubers back then. Marquez has been on the platform from 15 years old. Marquez has been on this platform. He started at 14 years old. He's been on this platform for 14 years. Kids have always wanted to be YouTubers.
They've wanted to be YouTubers, but you know, the general public has not looked up to them like they're celebrities.
So something only matters to the general public.
They haven't aspired for the influencer lifestyle because that didn't exist.
So it's only worth criticizing if you can get rich doing it.
I don't think that's not the point I was trying to make.
I don't think it's the point you're trying to make, but I'm saying that's the result. I don't think obviously, Audrey, I know you're not making that point and you don't believe that.
I know.
But isn't that what happened, Romina? You've been around for this platform like from the old days, like me.
Would people even have known what to do if they saw that stuff on the platform like 10 years ago? I feel like they would have just seen that.
Oh, I don't know. If you see it in real life, do you know what to do? If you see it in real life, do you know what to do?
No, but there was no like cancel culture back then because it just wasn't as
The cancel culture
guess
was that
too
people just
new.
didn't watch or didn't
Yeah.
engage. That was the cancel culture, right? It wasn't like there wasn't like a mob, really.
Oh, you mean people made their own decisions and were reasonable?
Right. I mean, well, because the thing is that, like, I mean, we had like cancel culture, like, when video games were like, "Ooh, don't play video games because they're going to turn you into like a murderer or whatever." Like,
There was a like in the form of deplatforming and censorship. Yes, deplatforming and censorship goes back to the 80s and 90s with the demonization of video games under the pretext that they're going to make you violent, they're going to rot your brain, they have no value. The same thing with Simpsons, Mortal Kombat, South
yeah. I
Park,
mean,
and it
even
was
before
censorship,
that, like,
and it was
you can
puritanical
go,
back then. It was puritanical back then. Back then, though, it was more right-wing conservative parents groups were the puritanical ones. Now it's much more liberal, left-leaning cancel culture, but it's going to just revert back. Like, it's so weird. It always changes
yeah.
like this, by the way, because it
But
was
the thing is
also
that the thing is,
puritanical back in the super olden days.
the thing is though that it's the volume is the volume of people in the mob, right? Because like if we're talking about like cancel culture, like in general, right? Like if you want to go, we can go as far back as like the Roman Empire. Like we can go
Oh
super
yeah,
far back.
facts.
Oh yeah, let's just hang this guy on a cross. Like
Yeah, basically with like no, but for real, like this is kind of what I'm talking about. This is human nature. This is what I'm talking about.
but it's
This
like
is
but that's how many people were actually there, right?
Well,
Like
it was
what
a
like
it was a vocal mob. It was a vocal minority because and even the government didn't want to get involved. Pontius Pilate washed his hands of it. That's where the washing my hands of it comes from, because he absolved himself, because like, hey, this isn't my decision. I gave you the choice. You could have this murderer and rapist Barbarous, or you can have Jesus of Nazareth. You're like, which guy do you want me to let go? Oh yeah, give us Barbarous. Like it's they decided selectively that the person that they feel is more of a radical and disrupting the establishment, authority, and power was much more of a threat to them than a murderer and a raper, Barbarous. Like they decided like, we can cancel this guy who we know absolutely committed like legitimate crimes that we would never like drink a beer with, or we can crucify Jesus Christ. Like, like that's, and they made their choice on that one. Selectiveness in who to hold accountable is still part of human nature 2,000 years later. Like, I mean, you could use Joe Rogan as an example of someone did a compilation of Joe Rogan, like saying the N-word, like a couple of months back when they couldn't cancel him over COVID misinformation. And then some other people put together compilations of people like Cenk Uygur and Anik Kasparian and left-leaning people using the N-word. And then it's like, okay, so accountability for this person, but not these people. Selective canceling.
I do want to say something that, because like in the chat, Chris mentioned about Jackass having a production company and yada yada and all this stuff, but that's not how they started.
No,
like
that's
Jackass
not how they started.
with Johnny Knoxville. He just wanted to, he wanted to get into acting and stuff like that, and so he did like smaller stunts. Like he started off with doing smaller stunts and things like that, because he wanted to do stuff that was like that. And it really kind of started kind of like backyard kind of thing.
It started out just like how YouTube starts out, because even YouTubers go from being in their bedroom to being full-on production companies. The thing is, right. David Dobrik scaled
with, like all these like liabilities. Like
one of the things I have an issue with David Dobrik is I feel that most of the things that he ended up doing that ended up being problematic were completely avoidable. And I think they were avoidable with like minor precautions. And my biggest criticism would be like the lesson hasn't fully been learned, because those protocols have not since been put in place to avoid problems. And I think most YouTubers today could stand to operate like businesses. But the thing is, David Dobrik, and the reason that I think he was chosen as the subject of this documentary by Casey was because David Dobrik represented what, from an authenticity standpoint, kids and 20-something-year-olds and younger people and teenagers in this culture want, because David didn't grow up and sell out. Like, still Peter Pan, still doing it the YouTuber way, but with unlimited resources, but not bringing in adults, not bringing in contracts, not bringing in stunt coordinators, not bringing in none of the things that you theoretically should do that creates a work environment, because he wanted to keep it as close to the authentic vision of kids just having fun and doing their thing. And hey, you can do this too if you only had the opportunity, because winning that magic lottery ticket and having the opportunity to live that life is the appeal beyond just the content of David Dobrik. It was presented as you and your friends could be living your best lives. And the thing is, if the behind the scenes magic of that, it doesn't feel relatable because you have production teams and contracts and NDAs and liability waivers and protocols, then the magic of that childish wish fulfillment is gone. And we've all seen personally what happens when influencers do scale up, do get out of bedroom vlogger mode, and then people say, you're sold out, you're not authentic anymore, you went Hollywood, you forgot where you came from. And then they don't keep that loyalty when, you know, in a way they're almost punished for success. That's why David still used music you could hear on the radio as part of his editing style, even though that cost him money in terms of monetization. That's why, even though it would be much more practical to do things radically differently, and maybe even like not have to go over the top and lean on his personality and not have to constantly up the ante and just be like satisfied with where you're. That's not the culture of young people. Young people don't have a sense of consequences. And again, if you're going to be influenced by your audience, and your audience is a group of people younger than you who don't appreciate consequences, don't pay bills, don't live in the real world, probably haven't had consequences for anything, and everything is wish fulfillment.
Yeah. Can I put a
supply
pause
and
on
demand
that?
problem.
I have a question about David. I haven't watched his content in a while. Is he doing a lot more pranks recently? Like,
so it's less pranks and it's more if I bring up his channel, and I've only, like, for research purposes, like most of it now, to avoid I think some of these problems, has been, one, they've been doing a travel show because they got picked up by Discovery Media for a couple of things. One, they did that dodgeball thing I think 2 years ago, and then the rest of it. So most of it has been, because not all of his videos have always been pranks anyway. It's been actually the far minority of them to be very real. But the last couple of videos, I'll read the titles to you. The last couple of videos are surprise made her start crying, which is probably giving a giveaway. Surprising friends with the world's most expensive home. Stranded with her in South Africa. Surprising Nala with favorite celebrity. Rich girl invites me on a jet. Caught flirting with my best friend's girlfriend. Hot tubbing with dream girl. Telling my biggest secret.
all right, so
it's mostly just extravagant vacations at this point.
Because, like, people are mentioning in the chat, like, talking about adding a disclaimer, but I from what I remember of his content, it just doesn't seem like something that would need a disclaimer for the most part, like, unless something crazy, you know, like Jeff's accident was to happen or something like that.
Jeff's accident was not a planned, like, accident or thing for anyone to get hurt. Obviously someone did get hurt and nearly die, but
right, but that's why you put a disclaimer right at the start of it. That's why Jackass has that, because it's like, okay,
if you're David's things, like,
do it too.
Theoretically, most of this stuff is not supposed to be dangerous. And aside from the Jeff thing, the biggest instances and allegations was, remember, I told you all before the Cat 10 Barge article even ever came out, I told all of you that David would probably get canceled for like 3 things. I told you guys that it was probably going to be the over-sexualization of women in his thumbnails and in some of his videos, especially some of these videos where people are making out. I said that was probably going to be some of previously racially insensitive jokes. And I said that it was also probably going to be that there was going to be some like ratting of behind the scenes inner circle like secrets in terms of things not being what they seem. Like I said, that those would probably be the three things. And then later it became the main articles and all the things, and then Jeff's accident. But I told you guys months before everybody saw it happening that David was probably going to get canceled. I might have told you all as much as a year before it happened.
So what exactly is going on with this Casey documentary? Like, what's the big deal about it?
I mean, okay, this is like, I feel like this is a takeaway from the Casey documentary. I don't know, I haven't seen it, but this is,
but
at
you
least
saw the
this is my
interview that he said about it.
Yeah, my like entire takeaway from this whole discussion is basically where the future of influencer culture and content is going, because I feel like this is a trend that has happened before. Like where influencer starts off with nothing, you know, people watch them because they're like this homegrown creator. They grow, the videos grow with them. The stakes keep getting heightened because that's just the state of the platform now. Like, I love how Mr. Beast has made content that is more positive, but the only downside to his stuff is that he's constantly raising the bar, and it's kind of created this, I mean, it was going to happen regardless if he made videos or not. I'm just saying, like, he raises the bar.
Not to the degree. No, not to this degree.
Not to the same degree. He definitely, like, spearheaded that. Mr. Beast raised the bar with money. Not everyone can do that, so they resort
Casey raised it with, like,
things.
effort. Casey raised it
yeah,
with
if
effort.
you can raise it with effort, or you can raise it with danger, or like there's a ton of different things you can raise the bar with, or it can be a combo.
Mr. Beast raised it with money.
But yeah, Jimmy raised it with money. Not everyone can do that, obviously. So, but there's this culture basically of like crazier and crazier ideas. Like the bar just keeps getting higher and higher, and eventually things happen, people get hurt, and it's kind of like this. We've seen it happen. Logan Paul, David Dobrik.
Logan Paul's thing was about insensitivity, which I don't think that Logan Paul would get canceled today for Japan.
I think he would.
No, I don't. I think people would talk about it, and I think it would not have had the ripples that it had then, because back then it was considered the most egregious thing in 2017, 2018. That was considered like the most egregious thing anybody had ever done since like. We're just like. Because here's the thing: the worst thing anyone on YouTube. Your worst thing anyone on YouTube used to get. Remember that, like in the beauty community, that Laura Lee and all of them got called out for like saying racially insensitive stuff when like 5 years earlier, when they were all like under 18 and they were all 16 years old. It's like people on YouTube back in the day used to just get canceled and called out for tweeting racial slurs when they were 16. That was the worst anything anyone had done, basically. Aside from literally like crimes, aside from actual crimes. If you didn't commit an actual crime and you were going to jail as a YouTuber, the worst anyone did was, oh, you didn't pay your editor, or you faked your pranks, or you said racially insensitive stuff when you were a teenager, when you were being edgy on Twitter. And that was it. And then Logan Paul filmed the dead body. And then that was the most egregious thing. By today's standards, with all the things that have happened ever since then, all the sexual misconduct that on multiple creators that's happened since there, Logan Paul would be a blip and done, and we'd all move on for filming a dead body. I'm not joking. I'm like, by the way, Tana filmed a dead body in all aspects. God. Tana filmed a dead body too, and it went zoop. But she got more flack. Tana got more flack for saying the N-word than for filming a dead body.
When did she do that?
She filmed in a vlog, which has now since been deleted, an overdose victim in a stall during one of her vlogs. And that was before Logan Paul.
This is wild.
What? Wait, she was just like casually in a bathroom and then just found this
person? Was out, like it was one of those places where you're out like in a park and there's like there's outhouse stalls or whatever.
I'm just worried. Like, where are we going from here? You know, like, I feel like
we're going from here. Oh, don't worry, Audrey, because here's your answer. Here's your answer. Everyone will just be fake.
What's next? Like,
no, what's next is everyone will. No, what's next is everyone will just be fake. No, what's next is everyone will just be fake.
I think we're raising and developing a whole generation of sociopaths.
The human race has always been has always been nothing but a bunch of we're apex predators on this planet without fangs, wings, claws, or poison because we're sociopaths.
But I think I think that we're more empathetic than that.
We're an entire species of sociopaths.
But us as individuals would you say that us three are like that?
If you literally put us under enough stress, every single one of us is a ruthless, vicious animal.
I'm not talking about the outlier. I'm talking
No, I'm talking about every single one of us. No, I'm talking about if any one of us is subjected to the torture from SEER training, if any of us are put into like we'll all like the Joker was right. Every one of us is one bad day away from madness. The Joker was right. The Joker's right. One bad day, if you're tortured badly enough, you will have you'll do irredeemable stuff. I guarantee.
Here's my only like ray of sunshine and hope, all right, for the future of the YouTube community. Which I hope is what happened.
Bruh.
Okay, here's my thing, all right, because I personally feel like we're really close to, the ideas are so crazy. Like we've raised the bar so high with so many ideas.
Not me, I'm boring as hell.
Okay, well, I'm talking general YouTube culture, okay? Like, I feel, and I've talked about this, I feel like it could go either way, and maybe it'll go both ways, but it's either going to just be fake, and people are going to fake everything. But I do think that YouTube audiences, and this is also partially why it's so dangerous, actually like authenticity. They like to see the homegrown creator do crazy things. So, the only other route I can see people taking is focusing more on storytelling, because that's something that YouTube viewers have always connected
That'll be
with.
outliers though, because most people suck at storytelling. That's why there's only ever been so many great filmmakers, so many great writers, and because storytelling is legitimately hard.
Blowing up, if storytellers like actually start to become some of the more prominent creators, then other people will follow. So
no, I don't think it's Audrey, because they'll be shit at it.
But there's so many people. There's gonna be a couple good ones.
Audrey, we have 100 million content creators on YouTube right now. Only 3 million of them are monetized. That's 3%. We have 100 million content creators on YouTube. There have only ever been 300,000 channels to get a silver play button.
I'm talking about like the top, like the next trend,
That
I'm talking about like who's going to be the next Mr. Beast. I would hope it's someone.
There is going to never be a next Mr. Beast.
It's gonna be Audrey.
There always is. There's always.
No, I'm telling you, he's too big to duplicate.
I'm not saying they'll be bigger than Mr. Beast. I'm saying they'll just lead like a new trend of content and culture.
Yeah, but it'll never be as big as anything Jimmy ever did. That's peak, and they'll never be repeated again. He's once in a lifetime.
But that's also like what Jimmy's goal has been, is to be the biggest, right?
But
like I don't think like if another person. Yeah, and that's fine.
He will be the greatest of all time. He'll be the greatest of all time. Like of all time.
I'm not arguing with that. I'm just saying I think there's always cycles. There's going to be someone after him that has like the clout at the moment or whatever.
There'll always be a crop of people who will be the outlier people who will be the next 10 million subscriber. Yes, there will always be.
So I hope that those people, and I think it's happening. Like I keep talking about Ryan Trahan, but I really think that
he'll get to 10 million.
He's pushing storytelling. And yeah, he's for sure going to hit 10 million. And I think people are already starting to kind of take, inspiration from his style. And I like that because it's storytelling.
But Audrey, do you think it's possible to literally, without lying or without just not getting caught, to be capable of the level of creativity, ambition, drive, outlier behavior, and weirdness to get to 10 million subscribers on YouTube and never do anything problematic?
No.
Yes.
Well, I don't think that it's possible.
Audrey, Mr. Beast has been called problematic.
No.
It's just that nobody cared.
Right. I'm going to
Audrey, like he was called.
I think you can
whole articles were written about Mr. Beast, about how problematic he is. Multiple articles written about how problematic. It's the only good news is no one cared.
That's the thing.
I think there's a difference between like people nitpicking and then not doing
everything that's not a crime is nitpicking, Audrey. Literally.
I don't know if I completely agree with that.
Think about it. If someone does something and it's literally not a crime, why do we care?
Yeah, why even bring it up?
I wish, like, in a perfect world, the justice system would be a lot faster and like up to date with things.
No, not faster. Faster? No.
Well,
No, the
not
justice
fast
system
in the
should
sense that
not
wouldn't
be
be as
faster.
like efficient, but I wish we could just get
Faster.
Accurate.
Wait, why fast?
I wish it could be accurate and faster.
Wait,
because
why
the
faster?
internet moves so fast. Like, people make up their minds.
Audrey,
so
we do
quickly.
not want a quote unquote efficient justice system. It's like, go look up Japan. It's horrific. It's like, you do not want an efficient justice. Look, or maybe other people can, like, I'll just speak for me. I do not want an efficient justice system. It will not work out for people like me.
I would want it to be accurate. I just wish we could, because the reason why I said efficient is because the internet is so fast. So, you know, people are talking about the David Dobrik thing right now. And if they're having a lawsuit or whatever, it's going to take months, and then people aren't going to, or years, people aren't going to care anymore.
So what? Why should they care? It doesn't affect them.
True, but people are going to still make up their minds and have opinions without the backing of the justice system, unfortunately.
So they're going to have uninformed opinions, not backed by facts and evidence and by a conclusion that is in line with the system that literally dictates how we all live our lives. So how much is their opinion worth then?
I mean, does it matter?
The problem with the internet has been a bunch of people with uninformed, uneducated, unverified, unsubstantiated opinions up-jumped as their truth, walking around and telling everybody how to feel and how to live their lives instead of minding their own goddamn business. And that's probably the worst thing that's come out of the internet, not influencers. And I know that because I literally know young people in college who have anxiety attacks every day about whether they're just going to say the wrong thing and offend somebody and then never have a career for the rest of their life and end up flipping burgers because they deigned to have a wrong opinion at some point that literally affected nobody's life in any meaningful, substantive, material way. And that's a fucking tragedy, because back in my day, someone could get through their teenage years, their 20s, make their mistakes, grow up, learn from them, move on, and not have people hang it over their head for 5, 10, 15, 20 years and deny the person that they've become a future based on a person that they haven't been in over a decade. If you want to talk about miscarriages of justice, the court of public opinion never has come close to any type of accuracy for all of their speed and efficiency, because people are stupid.
I mean, I don't know why we would have to bring them in for something like this, right? Because this is kind of like for example, with the Paul, like the dead body thing. What, there would be no reason to bring that in. Like, how is that a crime, right? It's a crime against what? It's like a sensitivity crime. Like,
I have problems with the fact that he uploaded that to YouTube, and that the lack of checks and balances was his friend group of yes men not saying this is a terrible idea.
But it's literally not a crime, right?
But it's not a crime. No, it's definitely not a crime. It does break YouTube terms of service, which is why that should have been a problem in general with YouTube and its guidelines as a platform. And the YouTube didn't even take it down. Logan did, largely as a result of backlash. Backlash was not primarily in his own community. And the problem I have with what Logan did, and I've talked about this before, I think even on this program, is the fact that he literally, even with a disclaimer, again, he knew he had a young and impressionable audience. He triggered and traumatized a whole lot of very, very young people who don't know how to handle death. And the thing is, he himself said as a young adult that his reactions to this stuff was inappropriate because he himself didn't know how to react and handle it. So, like, you're an adult and you don't know how to process, seeing someone has taken their life in this forest in Japan, hanging themselves from a tree. You don't know how to process that. Like, first of all, I feel bad for him even encountering that, but they did go theoretically to that forest, knowing what it was, with the idea of running into that. And it was a bad idea because, again, you subjected yourself to something you didn't have to subject yourself to. It's like putting yourself in a bad situation and filming it. But again, I can't even hold Logan 100%. I hold him 90 or 80 or 90% responsible. I can't even hold him completely responsible in a culture of the internet that he was coming up in as a young, rich, and famous person, driven largely by a younger fan base than him, egging him on of anything for views, as long as it's not a crime. And with that, I do see a problem. I've always saw a problem with that. I've always spoken up about that being a problem. But I'm looking at the fact that I don't believe the problem does not originate with the influencers. It originates with a larger overall culture, and let's be real, mostly a culture driven from here in America and here in the Western world. And the drive of that culture is that consumerism has aged down at scale for reality TV content in a way that we've never seen, because young people used to watch cartoons and fantasy and animated content and scripted content. Younger people, the bar and age for reality type television kept coming down. And that's what created this culture around influencers and such, and people living their lives on camera. And it's a problem because if you watched these kind of things as a fan growing up, because both Jake and Logan were watching YouTube pranksters and wanted to be YouTube pranksters when they were teenagers, and they started this as teenagers. And people keep forgetting Jake and Logan Paul got rich and famous before they ever left high school. And I hate to break it to people, your age and maturity stunts pretty much when you hit your first 6 or 7 figures in life. The earlier you make 6 or 7 figures in life, if you make $100,000 in a year at 16 or 17 years old, you make more money than your parents combined have seen at 16 or 17 years old. One, how are your parents going to tell you anything? Because what are they going to do? Be the one who screwed up the family's millions? Probably not. They're probably not going to tell you what they're going to do. You're in charge. You know what you're doing. I'm just going to try to make sure you don't kill yourself because hey, you're making all these millions. You're the one who figured out the internet, and more power to them. That's kind of like a not unreasonable take of, okay, my kid made millions. What do I tell them? They're smarter than me at that point. I mean, that's not an unreasonable inferiority complex to have. When your kid beats you to that extent that early in life. And then as the kid, why do you listen to your parents? Their lived experience hasn't produced better results than you have at that point. And I'm not advocating for that and saying, hey, screw your parents. I'm saying it's like, this is human nature. It's not some unreasonable conclusion that these people got to with this weird outlier situation that happens to like 0.0% of people. Like, we act like there's a manual or a playbook for literally being 0.01% of humans that have an absurd level of success, attention, and fame. And ironically, I'm not entirely convinced that influencers have more power than they do have responsibility. I think that the meta narrative has been created that the influencers have all this unlimited power. They have agency over other people. They can Jedi mind trick people into giving them and doing whatever they want, as if, one, we all don't have individual responsibility and agency, and we can't get off the hook every time someone bats their eyelashes at us or waves money in our face or waves plane tickets in our face, that we're supposed to give up all of our morals and all of our common sense and all of our intelligence and everything like that, because frankly, that's more of a reflection of us than any influencer or celebrity. If we throw all that stuff out the window the minute they bat their eyelashes, wave the cash, or offer something up that we want. We don't really have much in common sense, morals, or values if that's the case. We should own that one. And then number two, on the other hand, the influencer isn't having their moral judgment compromised by one person. It's by millions of people. And I'm not laying them entirely off the hook, but I'm much more sympathetic if 1 million people are whispering in your ear instead of one. I'm much more sympathetic if 1 million people, 10 million people are egging you on and making you do dumb things than if it's one person egging you on, making you do something dumb. Because the scale of that, you're designed as a human being to be able to say no to one person and reject one person. There's not a framework for rejecting 1 million people. There's not a human like behavioral pattern. There's not a neural pathway that's designed for rejecting that. There's not a neural pathway for saying no to $1 million for most humans. For most humans, $1 million, whether it's in folding cash or $1 million in opportunity, is not something that most of us believe we'll experience. So it's literally what they used to call a Faustian bargain, a deal with the devil. It's like, you don't, like, it's very easy to say I won't ever do a deal with the devil until he comes a calling. It's really easy. It's really easy to say that when it's an abstract, not when it's your reality.
Yeah.
Fact.
I'm worried, man.
I think we should all be worried. I think that our culture in general is deteriorating. I think that we don't have a good value system anymore. I think it starts at home. I think that people are being raised by the internet. I mean, again, I'm not letting David or Jake or Logan or anybody off the hook, but at the same time, I'm like, these kids were literally raised by YouTube. What do we think was going to happen? And their audience is being raised by YouTube. What do we think is going to happen?
I feel like parents should, and I know it's like hard because some parents just don't know what's going on, but just being aware of like what your kids are watching, and even if it might seem harmless, I think there is like, I don't know, there's a certain level of influencer or type of content where you're like, this could go bad. Just trying to limit the amount of potential.
I mean, what do you do? How do you stop them? They have smartphones. How do you stop them when you're not there? Like, as it is, before the era of the smartphone, I grew up before the smartphones. My parents had to rely on me to not give in to peer pressure, which is why I didn't smoke, and I didn't do drugs, and I didn't sneak out. They could trust me to not do those things. But we don't have the same culture that I grew up with. I feel
like the only thing I could think of doing that would depend, I guess, on the kid, but just being like really open about and aware of what's going on, like even with just the culture and like what social media is like at the time. And at least with us, like we're more aware of like how social media works. So it's kind of easier for us to do that, or to at least understand, even if it's going to be completely different, in 5-10 years or whatever. I feel like I'm
installing a keylogger on when I have kids. I'm installing a keylogger on all their computers. I will have freaking spyware on all their computers and everything like that. They will all be hacked by me. And I'm not. You think I'm joking? And it's like, I mean, we'll see what like laws are. Like, I'm not above. I'll like freaking. I'll probably give them a piece of jewelry, and they won't know that piece of jewelry has like a freaking air tag in it or a tracker. I'm not even joking.
What are you going to gain from that, though?
What the hell?
and
God, no. That's like Life 360 on steroids.
Too authoritarian.
Emperor Roberto.
I feel like, I don't know. It's unfortunate, but that's how the culture and world is going. I feel like if I was a parent right now and my kid had TikTok, I'd be terrified, because you don't know what's gonna, like, at least with YouTube and stuff, you can see YouTube history, and like if it's gone, it's like, well,
that's
where
why,
to go?
again, I would just have TikTok, a server. Like, I'm capable of just literally putting a monitoring server and literally just like duplicating and having the actual like screen recording of everything on my kid's phone. I'm not kidding. When I have kids, I have that. I'm a tech. I have a freaking server closet downstairs in the basement. I'm tech capable of literally just surveilling my children at all times.
I will
say, sneaky, man.
I will say,
I think that's my right as a parent. I think it's my right as a parent to freaking surveil them until they're 18 years old. I'm legally accountable for them, so I might as well.
I'm just going to say that as somebody who was on the other side, on the other end of that stick at one point of her life, I resent it. very deeply.
They
And
can
it is
resent me from living to 18 years old. They can resent me from the perspective of living to 18 years old.
I'm just saying that it's left a very big scar in my relationship.
They can resent me while they live to be 18 years old, and they can remember whatever whenever anyone messes with them, and I get there on time or early and save their butts from God forbid whatever. They can just remember that me swooping in like a drone, not a helicopter, like a drone, and coming through clutch, and then they can resent me for that, for like coming in and cleaning house.
You do it, it's all fine. I would just say ignorance is bliss. If they don't find out that you've done it, then it's not gonna
even if they find out, you know what? They can resent me for. It's like, look, I'm not above bribery. They can resent me from their Lambo.
Wow. Okay.
I feel like if I ever have kids and social media and stuff, I think I'd probably just want to talk to them about it constantly, like not really just just being like, yo, what do you like to watch? What do you watch?
In reality, that would be my real plan, is to sit there and watch things with them and spend time with them. And the thing is, I plan to have the luxury of being a hands-on parent. That's my plan, God willing. But I mean, that's actually like when I first got on the internet, granted, like, again, my mom like trusted me and stuff like that. But it's like when we first got on the internet, it was in a central location. Because I mean, my grandmother bought us a computer. This is years and years and years ago. This is Windows 95, AOL, Windows 95, AOL 6.0, right? So you could only the internet's gonna be interrupted whenever someone calls the house on the phone. So you get the second line for people who remember dial up, and central location. The internet was much more limited back then, much more primitive. No one used their real name. Everyone was worried about predators on the internet back then. They made after-school specials and commercials about it every week. And you had, To Catch a Predator back then with, was it Chris Hansen? So kids were scared straight back then on all these things. Kids were genuinely had legitimate fear, not the overwhelming low levels of anxiety about everything under the sun that they have today, mind you. But back then, kids had a sense of physical consequences and mortal danger, and we were my generation was the first generation exposed to school shootings and things we had our level of threat was about physical violence against us back then. So we were acting with that framework. I'm not convinced today's children act from the perspective of self-preservation and literally the threat of physical violence anymore. I think their low-level anxiety is much more wrapped up in how people's opinions of them, rejection sensitivity, acceptance, validation. I think children and young people have much more wrapped up in validation than they do the threat of violence right now. And I think that's a big culture shift that people don't talk about.
So just to kind of bring it back to our topic, our main topic of the evening before we wrap up, how does something like the Casey documentary reflect on this kind of behavior or this culture? Is it something that's enabling it?
I think it's going to give
documentary about it.
I think it's going to give people, I think when it hits the mainstream, I genuinely believe it's going to give people the wrong idea about influencers. David Dobrik is an outlier. David Dobrik is an outlier in general in terms of his level of success, but even out of all the famous influencers, his behavior, his shenanigans, his disregard for boundaries, that's not what most people at his level of success in this industry are like. And I actually, and the thing is, that wasn't the intent of Casey's original thesis and documentary, because again, in 2019, when this started, before the controversies, David was a beloved creator, one of Casey's friends and one of his favorite creators, and had been constantly collaborating with, and he was thought of as potentially the best of us back then. And then things changed, and the narrative changed, and it changed off of a handful of things versus hundreds of things, but so be it. They were egregious things, not saying they weren't. But I do not think that the macrocosm of the worst of David Dobrik's behavior should be applied and looked at as what a successful influencer is going to be, but it is going to be representing what a successful influencer is going to be. I would have rather somebody made a documentary about Justine or Marquez or Jimmy or Mr. Who's the Boss, Arun over in the UK, or Ryan's Toy World and his situation, his relationship with his parents, or if they did a documentary about like say God, who's somebody that's like a young, very successful, but very still super young influencer that I'm thinking of. I mean, Ryan Trahan's still too new, I think, but in like another year or two, I'd love to see something about him. Or they could have done a documentary on Emma Chamberlain. Like, I would have rather see the first mainstream large documentary about an influencer and influencer culture be a positive a person that everyone could take an honest look at, see how earnest and hardworking they were, instead of this thing that's going to be like a cautionary tale and is largely going to, I think, discourage a lot of people from becoming like influencers. So
I hope people take this as a cautionary tale. I think I hope the like gist of the film
of the documentary.
Do you feel that if people watch this, they're going to want to encourage their children to become influencers and become content creators?
No.
That's a bad thing. And don't you see the good that can come from allowing someone to pursue that? This is going to
like every time stuff like this happened, like when the Logan Paul thing happened, it just made everyone on the platform look bad. You know, it's always the same.
I think Casey had a responsibility to put this story out when the narrative changed and the circumstances evolved.
He went
on the
into
ground.
it with the intent of it being hopefully positive.
Yes.
And it just kind of took a turn. So
yes.
I mean, I hope it would be awesome to see one that was more positive, because so many positive things do happen. Most of it is positive.
I think that someone who is overdue and deserving of a documentary, like I said, Justine is overdue and deserving of a featurette documentary. Maybe I'll have to do it myself. Like, you know, I think that Marquez is massively deserving of a documentary, a feature-length documentary on his rise and his success and his accomplishments. You know, definitely as somebody very respectable in the community. I think that Marquez and Justine probably represent the best of us, to be honest with you, aside from Jimmy. Jimmy's an obvious one, but I think that Justine and Marquez's path is theoretically more accessible, and therefore I think it's a better representation of what's possible. Jimmy is a once in a lifetime person. I do believe that you could work hard and duplicate the success of Justine or Marquez Brownlee. Like, I genuinely believe that, and I don't think that's so unreasonable, you know. So I think them. I mean, it's easy for me to say people in tech because tech very non-problematic, but like, you know, Arun, Marquez, Justine, you know, Sav from Super Sav,
even like Emma Chamberlain.
Chamberlain.
Yeah.
The only downside with Emma Chamberlain is the high school dropout thing, but there's reasons, you know, like you
know who else was the high school dropout? Adam Sandler.
Fair.
Oh.
Yeah, several, like, look, there have been plenty of successful high school and college dropouts, and I'm not taking that away from them. I'm just saying, like, there's a problem. Some
a taboo topic of.
Yeah, it could be seen as encouraging that. So, like, you know, that's the one thing. So
she has bought I don't know how many houses since 18 years old, like $1 million properties. So she's not exactly.
Or even, by the way, even a documentary about John and Hank Green, like that could be interesting. Like, so I mean, I think there are much more. I hope Casey keeps telling stories about the culture, and I hope that they don't all have to devolve in the way that the Dobrik story did. But I also think that one of the other things is that I think there are great lessons. I think Colin Samir did a great job of like highlighting what lessons they could learn from David Dobrik's controversies and downfalls when they talked about that, when they talked about creator responsibility. I think that was a great take on their part. I hope that message gets much more well received. But I also would want to encourage people that's like, if you're somebody and you're out there, you shouldn't change or compromise your values or your morals because you want to get close to an influencer or because of anything that they have to offer. And I don't think you should be excused, and I don't think you get to write it off and say power dynamics. I think you have to take, if you're an adult, you have agency, you should use it, and you should be responsible.
Right.
If you're an influencer, I don't think you should put people in situations or use what you have to negate or undermine their agency for your own benefit. I think you should be responsible. I also think you should really, if you get 1 million like subscribers, it's like you should start taking on, and yeah, you should lose the bedroom magic, and you should, go a little Hollywood. You should grow up and sell out. Everyone should just grow up and sell out. That's actually probably my best take, is everyone should just grow up and sell out. And
or at least hire like
everyone grow up and sell out and move, and we can all move to Florida.
Put in place.
Grow up.
Like, so
everyone
I feel
grow
like
up,
once
sell
you
out,
get
retire in
to
Florida.
a certain point, you should just have like some method of checks and balances where you're like, this is not dangerous.
All your tweets should come from your lawyer. all your tweets should come from your lawyer so that they're non-problematic and so that they bow to the czars of PC culture and everything like that. Make sure you're checking,
hire an attorney to do your social media management.
Hire your attorney. Make sure that everything that they tweet is not offensive and non-problematic, and if it is, that it won't hold up in a court of law. Never collab with anyone without doing a criminal background check.
Wow, going deep.
Yeah, never collab with anyone without doing a criminal background check, because you will be held accountable for everybody you ever appear. You will be canceled if anyone you ever appear on film with ever did anything to anyone ever.
Oh my God.
All of your collaborators, you need to check their entire Twitter history for the last 5 years.
Now I'm questioning every collab I've ever done. Thanks.
Yeah. No. And so, yeah, and that's what you have to do. That's your takeaway.
What else do you have to do?
And the
wrap up the episode. Do you have an outro?
Yeah.
Don't be stupid.
That's actually good. Like, yeah, I wish that was the soundbite.
That should be that's like the whole motto of this entire
documentary. I agree. No, because this was all stupid and preventable. It's like, hey, don't do stunts without a stunt coordinator. Don't do stunts without paperwork, waivers, NDAs. Don't be stupid. Don't be stupid. Yeah. All right. Wrap it up. Is that the Chappelle thing? Wrap it up. Is that the Chappelle thing?
I'm going to assume that it is because you just said wrap it up.
All right. Thank you for listening to a Friday night edition of the No Assembly Required podcast. Please remember to like, subscribe, review, and do all the things. We'll catch you at our regularly scheduled time, we hope, Thursday, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And next week, we'll probably be talking about something much more lighthearted. Hopefully, no one on the internet screws up too badly. This has been your trio of hosts, starting with Audrey, hold them all accountable, Ember, Rogue Romina, and of course your Dark Lord of the interwebs and Devil's Advocate extraordinaire, Roberto Blake. Thank you for listening. We'll catch you next time. Nah.